No band is ever truly good unless they play hardcore punk and are from New York, Long Island specifically. Yeah, my cat's here. Today's band, Incendiary, first formed in that particular city and that particular state in 2007. And despite their almost 12-year run, they've only put out 3 full albums. I mean, if you don't count EPs and split stuff that I've put out, which I don't because my show, my rules. The band have stuck to one label, and they're probably best known for teaming with CFO $sign to create WWE NXT Superstar Aleister Black's theme song. They also performed it live with Code Orange, the most metal entrance in WWE history, and I will fight you on that. Still, that's not the band's only accomplishment, as I'm about to tell you just how much more there is to them than meets the eye. Now, let's face the music. We start with their debut album titled Crusade. Released in 2009, it came out through Closed Casket Activities, and it's their shortest album at 23 minutes and 53 seconds. And for those with superhuman hearing, you might notice that there's not a producer name. That's because I couldn't find one, so let's do what we always do and just say that the band did it instead. In fact, it saddens me a little bit, sorry I messed up, that I couldn't find a whole lot about them. They have a Wikipedia page, sure, and all the albums are there, but there's no info besides that. There is also band members, which still consist of the same 5 since their lineup, apparently. Lead singer Brendan Caron, guitarist Rob Nobile and album sound writer Brian Audley, bassist Matt McNally, and drummer Dan Lomley. One of the bright sides of not having a lot of stuff to talk about backtracking is that I can give a clear opinion on if I like something, and this album is a good example. I may wind up using this phrase a lot for this episode, but this style of hardcore punk is a style I like, in that it's mostly short but doesn't waste its time at all. Bearing in mind that none of the band's albums even reach half an hour, that's really not a lot of time to make your point, but oh, how they make their point. Even though I can't find a whole lot of info about any of this stuff, this was maybe the band's most successful album, and I say that maybe because this and their second album, Cost of Living, between those two, they released 3 EPs, all of which were split with other bands. Said EPs are with Suburban Scum, Unrestrained, and Shibala, and they were released in 2010, 2011, 2012 respectively. The only one beside all those is the debut EP that came out a year before Crusade, titled Amongst the Filth. So yeah, not unusual for hardcore punk is that it's short and knows what it's doing, but one thing that sort of sets these guys apart from others in their field is probably how dark they go right off the bat. There's not anything wasted, there's no silly stuff, the band jump both first into some very charged up stuff, and it's all handled really well. Once again, hardcore punk debut, so it's nothing new, but the band do their best to make it as interesting as they can, even with their debut. There's almost something of a mathcore element to it, with how rarely the song structures repeat but all mesh together so well. It starts off with momentum and keeps it going through, and the lyrics cover the bad sides of religion and politics, being about standing up for yourself in the face of things, people in high power trying to hold you down. So yeah, that's that. And the band kick it all off really well. Brandon's vocals are strong and sharp, nice and comprehensible, so it's really nice to have someone to understand. Rob and Brian kill it on guitar with good chugging riffs and heavy breakdowns. Matt's bass is deep and very nice to listen to, and Dan's drumming is heavy and balanced. Some of the songs include Sacramentum, Fuck Your Beliefs, Antichrist, Perdition, and my favourite in the closing track, The Streets Bring Only Blank Stares. Short but powerful and with a lot of surprises thrown in, Crusade is a blast to the face with gritted teeth and closed fists. Yeah, I can recommend this one. We then reached their third album, Cost of Living, released in 2013 through Closed Casket Activities again. I don't have a whole lot to talk about for this album. I'm sorry I'm stuttering so much, and I've said what I already need to say about it beforehand when talking about Crusade. The band put that album out, put out a slew of split EPs after that, and then released this. I'm just going to assume that with those EPs they toured with the bands that they recorded with, so let's leave it at that. But I think that one thing that could have helped was being around those bands anyway. I mean, sure, Crusade was a sharp album, but one thing I liked was the feeling that the band weren't showing all their cards yet, which is good for a debut. With Cost of Living, I feel like Incendiary learned from those other bands, and you know what they say about iron sharpening iron. In this case, it means a damn good sophomore effort that followed an already damn good debut. One thing that I like for this album as well, among many other things I like, was the better production. Again, I have no clue if it's done by the band or not, but they have a better handle on what they want to do for this one. I can't even chalk that up to being 4 years between album releases because of all the band's EPs negating anything I have to say about that, so let's say that the band improved from that too. And if that is indeed the case, then I have absolutely no complaints. So the band once again step up to the plate, grab a hold of what they've got, and swing for the fucking wuthering fences. I get the feeling that if I were familiar with Incendiary back in 2013, I totally would have put this album on my best of that year list. Once again, this could be chalked up to the EPs in between, but the band took that momentum and energy from their first album and they managed to present it in some interesting ways. This is a perfect sequel album, as the band has clearly learned and improved and it feels a lot more natural. But once again, they don't show everything. They just have a better handle on what they're doing. It's a more punk-leaning album too, and it's got more of that classic energy, and there's even more usage of ganga vocals, which there was sort of a lack of for their debut, but it just goes to show that the band have clearer minds going into this one. The structure is really the same, fast-paced, slow down, and definitely always worth headbanging to. The lyrics go over politics, religion, unity, and recognizing your enemies, and there's even parts of news clippings about crimes related to it that add a nice dark layer. And it's all pretty much also down to the band again. Brendan's vocals take on a more guttural sound and impacts. Robin Brown's guitar work carries some great breakdowns into the grooves. Matt's bass is deep and groovy too, and Dan's drumming is mean, punchy, and strong. Standout songs include Deep Before Creed, Primitive Rage, SOV, The Power Process, and my favourite and the closing song, Silence is the Sentence. The band put in the fucking work for this one and granted a beefier, better produced, and punchier second album, and I can recommend it. It's good. And finally, we reached the band's third album, 1,000 Miles Stare, released in 2017 through Closed Cassette Activities. It's the band's longest album at 27 minutes and 49 seconds. It's also the first album that I listened to by the band in full, and for those who saw my Best Albums 2017 video, then you would know that this one was on that list, and number 4 overall, I believe. Because, this album is really awesome. I would argue that around this album's release is when many people, myself included, got more familiar with the band, considering that Alistair Black would make his NXT debut proper in 2017, appearing in the UK division of the brand in a losing effort to Neville. He's doing great work without WWE, so I'm happy about that. But hey, people love Alistair Black because he's a badass, and a badass wrestler deserves a badass theme song by a badass band. Although I'm not a super huge fan of CFO's tendency to make repetitive songs, I give Black's theme a pass because it just sounds so cool. Although that theme song isn't on this album, I'll be damned if it's not a good representation of the band's sound on this album. In the 4 years between Cost of Living and this one, the band evolved so much. Once again, the sound is better produced, and it proves that the band continued to progress. A 4-year gap is a big one between albums, so assuming that the band was spending all of their time learning from the past, it works well. I sort of like the different approach too, as there's no string of EPs or other releases from Cost of Living 2,000 Miles Stare. It makes it feel like the band wanted to learn more on their own, or that's the story that I'm going to go with at least, because it just sounds good in my head. The band managed to once again flip around their sound while still staying true to hardcore punk. The album is somehow both heavier and more melodic. It's more punk and hardcore, with some new things tried without going too overboard with any of it. Even though the band don't show all their cards once again, they still go all out for this one from start to finish. Incendiary is a band that doesn't let up, and this album might be the very definition of not letting up. For a band that puts out albums shorter than most EPs by other bands that play the same music genres that they do, they once again fill the time really well. They know how to put a lot of meat on short songs, and that goes double since all their albums only have 10 songs each. Again, not a lot of time for most bands, even most bands who play the genre, but damn it, do Incendiary know what they're doing. The structure is strong and stable, as a Brexit reference for you, balanced and heavy too. The lyrics cover equality, trouble of youth, people in power, making it more politically minded for the modern day, so it's a bit easier to follow. Brandon's vocals are short and to the point, hitting you hard. Rob and Brian kill it with awesome riffs and chokes. Matt's bass shines brightly with good riffs and tone, and Dan's drumming punches through the entire album, going fast and mean. Standout songs include Front Toward Enemy, No Purity, Hard Truths Cut Both Ways, Fact or Fiction, and my favourite in The Product is You. 1,000 Miles Stare is vicious, throttling you with the sound, but giving you enough breathing room to appreciate it. Performed, written, and produced so damn well, I can totally recommend this one. It's kinda good. It's kinda great. So, let's round them up. Most favourite is 1,000 Miles Stare. I honestly believe that the band has taken the necessary steps to improve, and the album has an energy and intensity to it that really can't be described, even by me, who's usually good at that sort of English thing. Least favourite is maybe Crusade. Well, I do still enjoy it. It does feel sort of typical for its time, but hey, it's still a good listen and a good starting point too. I'd close my mouth, but we all know that silence is a sentence. I'll see you for my next two-part episode where I cover Mesa, Arizona's own Jimmy Eat World. And as always, thank you for watching. You're awesome. Bye-bye.